The massive doors of the Great Hall swung open with a sound that echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Thomas Reed walked in, his step steady and unhurried on the polished floor. 5,000 pairs of alien eyes turned to watch him, the representatives of the most powerful civilizations in the known galaxy. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched upward for what seemed like miles, its crystal walls catching and reflecting the light of 3 artificial suns. Council members sat in rising tiers, their seats arranged in perfect circles that reached toward the distant ceiling. At the center of it all stood the speaker's platform, where High Speaker Marcus waited with his silver robes flowing in the artificial breeze. Reed didn't hurry. He didn't bow. He simply walked to the designated spot and stood, hands clasped behind his back, in the way that had become typical of human representatives, respectful but never submissive. Ambassador Reed, High Speaker Marcus's voice boomed through the chamber, enhanced by hidden speakers. You stand before the full assembly of the Galactic Council. Do you understand why you have been summoned? I do, Reed replied, his voice clear and steady. Though I must say, I find the timing interesting. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. They weren't used to such direct responses. Most species would have launched into lengthy formal greetings by now. Then you know, Marcus continued, that Earth's provisional membership period has ended. It is time for your world to fully join the Council's Economic Unity Program. The contracts have been prepared. All that remains is your signature. Reed smiled slightly. No. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. In the 10,000 years of Council history, no species had ever refused full membership. The benefits were supposed to be too good to pass up. The trading networks, the technology sharing, the protection of the Council fleet, all of it waited on the other side of that signature. Perhaps, Marcus said, his tone growing sharp, you misunderstood. This isn't a request, Ambassador. The provisional period is over. Your world must join the Economic Unity Program. It is the way things are done. No, Reed said again, just as calmly as before. Earth has reviewed the terms. We've studied the implications, we've run the numbers, examined the treaties, and consulted with our provisional trading partners. Our answer is no. Now the murmurs turned to outright discussion. Representatives turned to each other, speaking in dozens of languages. Some gestured with appendages that looked nothing like human arms. Others changed colors or emitted pheromones of shock. Marcus raised all 4 of his hands for silence. Ambassador Reed, surely you understand the consequences of refusal. Your world would be cut off from Council trade routes. Your ships would be barred from Council space. Your colonies would lose Council protection. Reed's smile grew slightly wider. Would we? Interesting. Because by our reading of galactic law, the original laws, not the recent interpretations, none of that is actually required. We're happy to continue trading with any worlds that wish to trade with us. We're happy to share our space lanes with peaceful travelers. And as for protection, he paused, meeting Marcus's gaze directly. Well, Earth has some thoughts about that too. This is unprecedented, a voice called from the upper tiers. It is, Reed agreed. But then, humans often are. We've spent our provisional period learning, watching, and preparing. We've made our decision. Earth will not join the Economic Unity Program. We will remain independent. High Speaker Marcus stepped down from his platform, his robes whirling around him. Ambassador Reed, you will take these contracts back to your government. You will explain the necessity of compliance. You will return with a more reasonable response. Reed shook his head. No, Speaker Marcus. I will return to Earth with news that we have maintained our independence. What happens next is up to the Council. Choose carefully. With that, Reed turned and walked out of the Great Hall, leaving chaos in his wake. As he reached the doors, he heard the beginning of what would become a legendary argument in Council history. But he didn't look back. Humanity had made its choice, and Thomas Reed smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. Commander Wilson stood on the bridge of the Council's flagship, Unity, watching as his fleet of 50 warships dropped out of hyperspace near Earth's moon. He smiled, expecting to see panic in Earth's defense forces. The sight that greeted him wiped that smile away. "Sir," his sensor officer reported, "I'm detecting thousands of satellites. They form some kind of network. And there are defense platforms. Lots of them." Wilson leaned forward in his command chair. Earth wasn't supposed to have this level of defense technology. The Council had carefully controlled what they shared during the provisional period. Yet here was evidence that humanity had been busy. "Open a channel to their defense command," he ordered. "Let's show them how outmatched they are." The main screen flickered to life, showing a calm-faced woman in a blue uniform. Admiral Jane Stone of Earth's Combined Space Force didn't look impressed by the Council fleet. "This is Commander Wilson of the Council Enforcement Fleet," he announced. "Your world has 24 hours to reconsider its position and sign the Economic Unity Agreement. Otherwise, we will be forced to demonstrate the consequences of defiance." Admiral Stone's expression didn't change. "Commander Wilson, this is a courtesy call to inform you that you have entered a restricted military zone without permission. You have 1 hour to withdraw your fleet beyond the orbit of Mars." Wilson laughed. "Admiral, surely you can't think your handful of ships can stand against a Council fleet." "Look closer, Commander." The sensor officer's voice shook slightly. "Sir, the defense platforms are moving. They're combining. And those satellites, they're not just sensors. They're forming some kind of energy web between them." Wilson watched in disbelief as Earth's orbital defenses transformed. Platforms that had seemed scattered and vulnerable linked together into massive battle stations. The satellite network glowed with energy fields that could slice through shields like paper. And from behind Earth's moon came Earth's own fleet. Not the few dozen ships he'd expected, but hundreds of vessels of all sizes. "As you can see," Admiral Stone continued, "we've spent our provisional membership period preparing for this moment. We knew the Council wouldn't accept our independence easily." "This is impossible," Wilson sputtered. "These technologies, they're beyond your level. The Council carefully monitored." "The Council," Stone interrupted, "monitored what we wanted them to see. Humanity has a long history of keeping secrets when needed. Now, I'll repeat my warning. You have 1 hour to withdraw. We don't want a fight, Commander, but we're ready for one." Wilson stared at his tactical display. The Council fleet was powerful, but Earth's defenses were unlike anything he'd seen before. They'd somehow developed technologies that matched or exceeded Council standards, all while appearing to be just another developing species. "Think carefully about your next move," Stone added. "The Council didn't send enough ships to overwhelm us, did they? They thought this would be easy. A simple show of force to make us fall in line. But we're not like the other species you've intimidated. We choose our own path." Wilson gripped the arms of his command chair. He had orders to force Earth's compliance, but facing these defenses would mean heavy losses. Losses the Council hadn't planned for. "You have 55 minutes remaining, Commander," Stone reminded him. "I suggest you use them wisely." The screen went dark, leaving Wilson to face an impossible choice: fight and likely lose half his fleet, or retreat and admit that humanity had outmaneuvered the Council. In the end, it wasn't much of a choice at all. 40 minutes later, the Council fleet turned and headed for the Martian orbit line. As they retreated, Wilson couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a change that would shake the galaxy. Behind them, Earth's defenses remained on alert, a clear message to the galaxy: humanity would not be controlled. Dr. Robert Gray sat in his dimly lit office at the Earth Economic Analysis Center, surrounded by holographic displays showing trade data from across the galaxy. For 3 months, since Earth's refusal to join the Economic Unity program, he'd been studying the patterns. Tonight, everything finally made sense. "Computer, show me the resource flow chart for the Centauri system again," he said, rubbing his tired eyes. The display shifted, showing lines of trade between stars. Now overlay the Technology Development Index. The pattern was clear. Every time a member species made a technological breakthrough, their resource allocations changed. The Council always had a reason: safety protocols, efficiency standards, environmental concerns. But the result was always the same: progress slowed to a crawl. His office door opened, and Director James Walker walked in. "Tell me you found something, Robert. The Council's threatening more sanctions." Gray nodded, pointing to his displays. "Look at this. Every species that joins the Economic Unity Program follows the same pattern. They get access to Council technology, yes, but then their own development just stops." He pulled up another chart. The Centauri, for example. Brilliant scientists. They were developing quantum technology at an amazing pace during their provisional period. Then they joined the program. Suddenly, all their research funding got redirected to approved projects. Walker leaned closer, frowning at the data. "Show me more." The Arcturus Alliance. Gray continued, changing the display. They were pioneers in biotechnology. After joining, all their research now goes through Council facilities. The Rigel Confederation. Same story. They were revolutionizing energy production. Now they're dependent on Council power systems. "It's not just control," Gray explained, standing up to pace the room. "It's systematic suppression disguised as help. The Council doesn't want member species to develop their own solutions. They want everyone dependent on Council technology, Council trade routes, Council everything." Walker picked up a data tablet, scrolling through the evidence. "How did we miss this during our provisional period?" "We didn't entirely miss it," Gray said. "That's why our research teams worked in secret. But I don't think anyone realized the full scope until now. The Council's been doing this for thousands of years. They present themselves as helpers, guides for younger species. But really, they're making sure no one ever grows strong enough to challenge them." The display changed again, showing Earth's development curve. Unlike the other species, it shot upward in a steep line. "This is why they're so worried about us," Gray explained. "We're the first species in 10,000 years to refuse membership. We kept developing our own technology instead of becoming dependent on theirs. And now we're proving their entire system isn't necessary," Walker finished. "Exactly. But here's the really interesting part." Gray pulled up communications data. "Other species are starting to notice. I've detected encrypted transmissions between non-Council worlds. They're watching us, seeing that independence is possible." Walker set down the tablet. "The Council won't let this spread. They'll try to make an example of us. They already tried," Gray reminded him. "Their fleet retreated. And every day we stay independent, more species question the Council's authority. I've identified at least 3 civilizations that are secretly stockpiling resources, preparing to follow our lead. We need to get this information out," Walker decided. "Not just to Earth's leadership, but to other species. Can you prepare a report that even non-humans will understand?" Gray nodded, already turning back to his displays. "I'll have it ready by morning. The evidence is clear. The Council's unity is really just control. And now that someone's finally stood up to them, the whole system will crumble." Walker finished. "Keep working. I'll make sure this gets to the right people. The galaxy needs to know the truth." As Walker left, Gray started compiling his report. The Council's perfect system was about to face its greatest challenge: the truth. The trading outpost on Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon, wasn't supposed to exist. According to official Council records, Earth's colonies couldn't support independent trade. Yet here it was, bustling with activity as ships from a dozen species came to trade freely, away from Council control. Representative Hall of the Centauri stood in the observation dome, his silvery skin reflecting the starlight. He watched as another merchant ship landed, this one bearing markings from the Arcturus system. 6 months had passed since Earth's defiance, and everything was changing. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" a voice asked behind him. Hall turned to see Ambassador Reed approaching. A month ago, that Arcturus captain wouldn't have dared to trade outside council channels. Things are moving faster than we expected, Hall admitted. When my government sent me here secretly, we thought it would take years to build a resistance. But now, Reed nodded, looking out at the busy landing field. Now ships arrive daily. Everyone wants to trade with the humans who said no to the council. A small alarm chimed on Hall's wrist device. Speaking of trade, the latest technology exchange is ready. My scientists are eager to share their quantum computing advances now that we don't have to hide them from the council. They walk together through the station's corridors, passing humans and aliens working side by side. What had started as a simple trading post was becoming something more, a symbol of freedom from council control. In a secure conference room, Dr. Gray waited with his latest findings. The wall displays showed trade routes spreading across the galaxy like a web, all avoiding official council channels. The underground network is growing, Gray reported. 27 species are now trading directly with Earth, bypassing council restrictions. And look at this. He pointed to a blinking dot near the galactic core. The Rigel Confederation is secretly rebuilding their advanced energy research program. The council suspects something, Hall warned. They're increasing patrols along their trade routes. But they can't watch everything. They never could. Reed smiled. That's why their control was always an illusion. They just convinced everyone it was impossible to operate without them. A young lieutenant burst into the room. Ambassador, representative, you need to see this. They hurried to the command center, where a large screen showed a council enforcement fleet approaching a merchant ship near Saturn. They're demanding to board for inspection, the lieutenant reported. Reed stepped forward. Show me the merchant's identification. It's one of ours, Gray said. Captain Rogers, running medical supplies to the Centauri colonies. Hall's silver skin darkened with concern. If they find proof of our underground network. They won't, Reed said firmly. He pressed a button on the communications panel. Captain Rogers, this is Ambassador Reed. Execute Protocol Independence. On the screen, the merchant ship suddenly split into 3 identical vessels, each heading in a different direction. The council fleet hesitated, unsure which to follow. Holographic projection technology, Gray explained to a stunned Hall. Combined with sensor deflection. Another thing we developed during our provisional period. They watched as the council ships tried to pursue all 3 targets, spreading themselves too thin. By the time they realized all 3 ships were decoys, the real merchant vessel had already slipped past them, cloaked and undetectable. Beautiful, Hall whispered. My people have dreamed of such freedom for generations, but we never dared. That's what the council relied on, Reed said. The fear to try. But now everyone's seeing the truth. Their power only worked because we believed in it. Gray checked his data feeds. News of this incident will spread. More species will realize the council can't maintain control. They'll come here, Hall realized. Just like we did. Looking for a way to break free. Reed smiled as another merchant ship landed safely on Ganymede. And they'll find it. The resistance isn't just human anymore. It belongs to every species that dreams of choosing its own path. Outside, Jupiter rose over the horizon, casting its light on the newest symbol of galactic freedom, a trading post where all species could meet as equals, free from council control. Captain Mary Ford stood at the helm of the Earth ship Pioneer, staring at the swirling energies of hyperspace outside her view screen. The council had closed all official hyperspace lanes to Earth vessels 2 days ago, thinking they could cut off human trade. They didn't know what her ship was about to prove. All systems ready, Captain, her navigator reported. The new drive is operating perfectly. Ford nodded, her hand steady on the controls. Send the signal to Earth Command. Operation Pathfinder is go. The Pioneer wasn't just any ship. Hidden beneath its ordinary exterior was humanity's newest achievement, a hyperspace drive that didn't need the Council's carefully controlled lanes. If it worked, everything would change. Back on Earth, in the Combined Space Force Command Center, Admiral Stone watched the Pioneer's progress with Director Walker and Dr. Gray at her side. "The Council's sensors have detected them," Gray reported, monitoring his displays. "Their patrol ships are moving to intercept." Stone smiled. Too late. They still think ships can only travel through their established lanes. They don't understand what we've built. On the Pioneer, Ford gave the order: activate the independent navigation system. The ship's new drive hummed to life. Outside, the chaotic energies of hyperspace shifted from purple to gold. Warning messages flashed from the Council ships, ordering them to return to approved lanes or face destruction. Ford opened a channel to all nearby vessels. "This is Captain Ford of Earth. Watch carefully." The Council's lanes were never necessary. They were just another form of control. With that, the Pioneer turned sharply, diving into unexplored hyperspace. Council ships tried to follow but couldn't match their maneuvers. The Pioneer was creating its own path through space. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, alarms blared. High Speaker Marcus watched in disbelief as the human ship did the impossible. "How?" he demanded. "The lanes are the only safe way through hyperspace. Without them, ships are lost forever." But the Pioneer wasn't lost. It appeared in system after system, far from any Council lane. Each time, they broadcast the same message: the lanes are a lie. Space is free for all. Back on Earth, Gray's computers were flooded with messages from other species. "They're requesting the specifications for our drive," he told Stone and Walker. "The Centauri, the Arcturus Alliance, even some Council member worlds." "Send them," Walker ordered. "The Council used the lanes to control trade and movement. Without that control, their whole system falls apart." Stone finished. On the Pioneer, Ford received new orders from Earth Command. Her crew cheered as she read them aloud. "We're to begin Operation Open Roads," she announced. "We'll teach other species how to navigate freely through hyperspace. The Council's monopoly on space travel ends today." The Council's response was quick but ineffective. They sent ships to arrest the Pioneer, but couldn't catch a vessel that didn't need to follow their lanes. They threatened sanctions, but more species were already learning to trade without them. In his private chamber, High Speaker Marcus received a report that made his hands shake. Not only were humans teaching others to navigate independently, but they were sharing other technologies too. The Council's careful system of technological control was breaking down. "Send everything we have," he ordered. "This must be stopped." But Council ships found themselves facing a new reality. Their weapons, designed to control regulated lanes, couldn't track ships that moved freely through hyperspace. Their authority, based on controlling movement between stars, meant nothing against those who could chart their own course. As the Pioneer completed another jump, Ford sent a final message to the Council ships trying to chase them. "You can't control space itself. The galaxy belongs to everyone." In the darkness between stars, humanity had found the key to true freedom, and they were sharing it with everyone. The meeting room on Europa Station wasn't built to hold representatives from 30 different species, but today they made it work. Some stood, others floated, and a few joined through holographic projections. All of them had come to hear Director James Walker's proposal. For 10,000 years, Walker began, standing at the front of the crowded room. "The Council told us we needed them. That without their guidance, their rules, their control, the galaxy would fall into chaos." He paused, looking around the room. They were wrong. Representative Hall of the Centauri stepped forward, his silver skin glowing under the lights. "In just 1 year since Earth's defiance, we've proven everything they said was false. We can trade without their markets. We can travel without their lanes," added Captain Ford, fresh from another successful independent hyperspace journey. "And we can develop technology without their approval," Dr. Gray continued, displaying data showing the scientific breakthroughs of various species since breaking free from Council restrictions. Walker nodded to each speaker. "But now we face a choice. We can remain separate, independent worlds finding our own paths. Or, he pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the center of the room. It showed a network of worlds, all connected but distinct. We can build something new, a true coalition of equals. The room erupted in discussion. Some species had bad memories of joining larger groups. Others worried about losing their newfound independence. Walker waited for the noise to settle. "This isn't the council," he assured them. "No one controls anyone else. No required trade routes. No restricted technology. No enforced unity. Instead, we share what we wish, trade what we choose, and help each other grow stronger." Ambassador Reed, who had been quietly watching from the side, stepped forward. "Earth doesn't want to rule. We just want to be free. And to help others be free too." A representative from the Arcturus Alliance raised a hand-like appendage. "The Council still controls much of the galaxy. They won't let this happen." "They can't stop it," Ford replied. "Every day, more ships learn to navigate independently. More worlds develop their own technology. Their control is already breaking. But we're stronger together," Hall added. "My people have already begun sharing quantum computing technology with Earth. In return, they've helped us develop new defense systems. Imagine what we could all achieve if we worked together, as equals." Walker brought up another display, showing trade routes spanning the galaxy. "We've prepared a simple agreement. Each world remains independent. Each chooses what to share and with whom. No mandatory programs, no controlled economies. Just mutual support and respect." Dr. Gray stepped forward with his latest data. "According to my projections, a coalition of free worlds working together would surpass Council technology levels within 5 years. Not through control, but through cooperation." The room grew quiet as the representatives considered this. One by one, they began to nod. Even those attending through holograms signaled their agreement. Ambassador Reed smiled. "Then let's make it official. The Free Worlds Coalition is born today. Not through force or demands, but through choice." Walker looked around the room, seeing hope in eyes and expressions that had known only Council control for generations. "Together, we'll show the galaxy a better way. Not their way of forced unity, but our way of chosen cooperation." As the representatives began signing the agreement, a single page, in contrast to the Council's 1,000-page contracts, Reed turned to Walker. "They said humans would bring chaos to the galaxy," Reed mused. Walker watched another species add their mark to the coalition agreement. Maybe some chaos was exactly what the galaxy needed, something to break the chains they never knew they wore. Outside Europa Station's windows, Jupiter hung in the black sky like a witness to history. The Council's perfect order was ending, replaced by something messy, challenging, and free. Something human. 1 year after the formation of the Free Worlds Coalition, Ambassador Thomas Reed stood once again in the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. This time was different. The rising tiers of seats were half empty, and High Speaker Marcus's silver robes seemed to have lost their shine. "You've destroyed everything," Marcus accused, his voice echoing in the chamber that suddenly seemed too large. 10,000 years of perfect order, ruined in 2 years by humans. Reed smiled gently. "No, Speaker Marcus, we didn't destroy order. We replaced control with choice." The remaining council members murmured among themselves. Many were already secretly trading with coalition worlds, unable to ignore the prosperity that freedom had brought. "Look at the chaos." Marcus gestured to a large display showing trade routes crisscrossing the galaxy. Unregulated ships flying wherever they please. Technologies spreading without proper oversight. Species making their own choices without guidance. "And has the galaxy collapsed?" Reed asked quietly. "Have worlds fallen into war? Has trade stopped?" He stepped forward, addressing the whole chamber. "Or has something else happened?" Dr. Gray, standing beside Reed, activated his own display. "In the past year, scientific advancement has increased by 400% across coalition worlds. Trade volume has doubled, and not a single ship has been lost in the dangerous, unregulated hyperspace lanes. Because we were wrong, a voice said from the upper tiers. Everyone turned to see Council Member Ross standing. The controls we created were never about safety. They were about power. And now, he looked around the half-empty chamber. Now everyone knows it. Captain Ford stepped forward next to Reed. The hero of the hyperspace lanes had been invited to witness this day. We've proven that ships can plot their own courses, that worlds can choose their own paths, that species can advance without being held back. And that's what really frightens you, isn't it? Reed asked Marcus. Not that we brought chaos, but that we showed everyone they never needed you. Marcus slumped in his grand chair. What do you want? To disband the council completely? No. Reed's voice was firm. We're here to invite you to join us. The chamber erupted in surprised whispers. Reed waited for them to quiet before continuing. The Free Worlds Coalition isn't like the council. We don't demand. We don't control. We invite. We share. We grow together because we choose to, not because we're forced to. Director Walker stepped forward, holding the simple datapad. This is our proposal. The Council can join the coalition as equals. No more enforced unity. No more controlled trade. No more restricted technology. Just worlds working together because they want to. And if we refuse? Marcus asked. Then you'll watch as more worlds choose freedom. Ford answered. Your power is already fading. You can either evolve or become irrelevant. Council Member Ross stood again. I vote to accept their offer. My world is tired of controlling others. Perhaps it's time we tried trusting them instead. One by one, other council members stood. Even Marcus could see the future approaching like an unstoppable tide. Finally, he rose. Perhaps, he said slowly, it's time for the galaxy to try humanity's way. Reed nodded, then turned to address the chamber one last time. 2 years ago, I stood here and said no to control. Today, I say yes to cooperation. Not because anyone forced us, but because we choose it. That's the difference that changes everything. As the former council members signed the coalition agreement, Dr. Gray's displays showed the new combined network of worlds forming. Not a rigid hierarchy, but an interconnected web of free peoples choosing to work together. Outside, the artificial suns that had lit the council chamber for 10,000 years dimmed for the last time. But through the crystal walls, the natural light of the galaxy's stars shone brighter than ever, illuminating the dawn of a new age. An age built not on control, but on the simple human idea that everyone deserves to choose their own path among the stars.